Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Cruise Corner, the brand new podcast from Cruise Trade News. So in our last episode, we caught up with Adam Oldfield, CEO and founder of marketing automation platform Force24, and we were also joined by Cruise Trade News' own head of digital, Richard Seal. Well, I'm delighted to say they're both back with us again, so thank you so much for joining us. In our last chat, we spoke all about how cruise lines and travel agents can harness personalisation. Well, in other words, sending emails to the right people at the right time to drive engagement with their target audience. The ability to which we're able to speak to a mass audience in a way that feels personal to all of them has evolved significantly in recent years as technology has grown, as platforms like Force24 have evolved. So to demonstrate this, I've dug out a series of emails that were sent into my inbox, and Adam, you have a few as well. I thought it'd be fun to ask you guys to have a look at them, rate them in terms of how well they're using personalization, and see kind of what lessons that we can learn from each of them. So to start off with, I'm going to give you both, Adam and Rich, an email that was sent into my personal inbox. So this is from a SIM company called Smarty. They are sort of a low-cost SIM. I was with these guys for about a year or two. And then I cancelled my contract and I signed up with another phone provider. So these guys have been trying to get me to re-engage, been trying to get me to sign up again. So Adam, what are the things that jump out to you most about this email?
I think it's a good email. It's well structured, it's clear, and it says exactly what you want it to do. There's, yes, granted, it's got the tokenized personalization hijack. But as we've already said, the personalization is the fact that it's been triggered to you at a certain time, and you've left them now, and they want to know why. And perhaps one of the things they want to ask you is, would you recommend us to somebody else? And they're just a really simple way, 0 to 10. It's great. I mean, it's not quite 10 words, one button, but it's not far off. So I think it ticks all the boxes for me.
Anything else that jumps out to you, Rich?
No, likewise. I mean, we ourselves as a brand, sort of like we don't send everything to everybody. If you're not engaging, we're not going to continuously keep sending you emails. But what we do have is we have a re-engaging journey. So for those that have dropped out, maybe have not seen our emails for a while, and we won't send them out our normal emails, but we want them to join the party again, so to speak. And so we will have a journey sitting there to try and get them to re-engage. And this for me, it sums up exactly. It's asking you to re-engage, which is what we want users to do.
Fantastic. So let's move on to the second example here. So I've got that, and this is actually one that you brought in with you today. So why don't you talk us through this? Who are they? What was the intention? And is this good or is this bad personalization?
Yes. So first of all, let's not name and shame. I don't know the name of the company or don't know anything about them, but I think it's an example of really bad personalization. So two things to jump out. The first thing is it has the tokenized content replacement. So it says Force24. So this was obviously sent to me saying special insurers for Force24. And then there was a couple of other little points down the email where they've put our name in it. And I can imagine somebody somewhere is thinking, we've done our job, we're using personalization. But actually, when you look at this email, it is in no way personalised. And it was in my spam folder. And so I only know about this email because I was searching my spam folder specifically to find a bad email to bring in.
And you found one.
And I found one. And so when we look at this and we say, right, which of those bullet points are really important to me? None, because I'm not looking for insurance. I don't know anything about insurance. I don't buy insurance for Force24. I don't have anything to do with it. And then when you look at, say, the call to action, your example, the call to action was giving a feedback pulse. It's, I'm going to give 0, or 10. Perfect. It's saying, give us a call. I mean, how aggressive is that? I've really got to want to buy right now, and I'm going to dial your phone number. It's terrible. But, I just think creatively, it's like very...
There's a lot of text there, isn't there?
A lot of text. 120 emails, and on the last podcast we discussed 10 seconds is the average amount of time that the average person spends reading all of those emails. 10 seconds. So that has got 0.1 of a second, and I am not going to have a clue what it is.
I totally agree with everything Adam's saying. I do actually like the way the call to action stands out.
Oh yes, I agree.
And I like the reviews, but yeah, no, I totally agree with everything else.
Okay, bad personalization. So one good, one bad, and we have one last example here from PayPal.
Yes. So I usually say, if you want to understand what good looks like, go to one of the biggest brands on the planet. You know, Apple usually do it pretty good. But I always say, though, copying without understanding is really dangerous. And knowing what they've done here is really smart. So firstly, this talks to a deeper form of personalization. So the first thing is, this email was delivered to me on a Thursday evening at about 6 p.m., I think. And it was towards the end of the month. So traditionally when people's pay packets are running thin on the ground, and it was, I think in about November, something about like that time. So from a personalization point of view, look at this. I'm here, it's towards the end of the month, a weekend away, paid in 3. Hell yeah, I would love a weekend away, and paying in 3, what a great idea. So you'll notice that my name, the personalization insert brackets, hi Adam, it's almost invisible. It almost doesn't matter. In fact, it doesn't matter on that email. The whole point of the email is, how do you feel? Would you like a weekend away? Yes, please. And that's 10 words, 1 button, really simple. If you are messaging somebody and it has more than 10 words and more than 1 button, Microsoft is basically saying, figure out who you're talking to, learn about them more, and have one thing you want to talk to them about. It's not always as easy as that, don't get me wrong. And we talked about personalization and segmentation earlier on in the previous podcast, but this, I think, typifies what good looks like for me.
Sure. Well, I think this is a really good example to look at, because what they all do, in fact, is they're examples of how the messaging needs to change in an email depending on where someone is on their booking journey, or what in terms of their engagement levels with that brand. In the context of the cruise industry, we have customers in our database, as all our listeners will have, who are seasoned cruise goers. They are pretty familiar with the whole product. They know where they want to go next. So it's kind of about that. They probably maybe need more tailoring, or you could argue they need less tailoring. Whereas you've got other audiences who are completely new to cruise. They're just sort of testing the waters, seeing if this is something for them. The emails, the messaging, and the content that you had to push out to those guys are vastly different. So, Adam, I wanted to come to you on this. So, talk to me. You mentioned something to me previously, a concept called narrow beam and broad beam marketing. I think that feeds into this quite nicely. So, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this, and so there is this concept that the human brain has the left side and a right side, and the left side is analytical, it's verbal, it's linear, it thinks, okay, and then the right side is creative, it's imaginative. I've forgotten all the other descriptive words, the adjectives, I think they're called adjectives to describe what it is, but we can imagine what it does. But the other thing that's really important about the right brain is it's fast, it's lightning fast. And Google did some research. It was in I think it was about 2004, 2005. And the research proved that human beings can react to digital assets. They can form an opinion towards a digital asset quicker than it was believed humans could even react. So they put brain monitors on and they flashed up web pages, and it was to gauge the reaction. And what they learned was that the right brain can basically decide, I don't like that or I like that within a split second before you've had a chance to read any of the content. So now let me say, how does a marketeer leverage that right brain in different stages of the funnel? So I'll just give you an example. Jack, would you like a cup of tea?
Yes.
Rich, would you like a cup of tea?
No, thank you.
You nodded and said no, thank you. That was a bit of confusion right there.
We start talking about biology and science, and Richard I don't know.
I don't know. If I was to ask most people, would you like a cup of tea? I don't need to borrow your brain in order to compute that answer. Yeah, no. It's really easy. And even to a degree, I would say, do you prefer milk or do you prefer... you'd be able to give a straight away answer. What temperature do you like your tea?
Hot.
Right, okay. So the problem here is I've now asked your brain to do some work. And the only part of the brain that can do that work is the left brain. And the left brain is a little bit slower, it's harder to get in touch with. The right brain's involuntary. I see something, I either like it or I don't like it. I don't think, shall I make a decision as to why I like it or don't like it? It's instant. This one's like, is that a good idea or is that a bad idea? Do I want it hot? Do I want it cold? How do I want it? So marketeers need to get on board with the fact that, as we know, 120 emails a day, 10 seconds is spread across all of them. We have to be able to latch on to what makes people interested quickly, within seconds. And this is this concept of broad beam attention. Broad beam attention is things like the weekend away paid in 3. I've aligned to the graphics, really simple colours, somebody having fun, weekend away, yes, I'm in. That's broad beam attention. Now, the example of the insurance company is where, as we move a little bit further down the funnel, I have to commercialize that right brain, because the right brain doesn't buy. The left brain buys. So if you think about it, you're buying anything. You'll be like, oh, that's nice. And then you'll be thinking, oh, but is it what I want? Because does it do X, Y, Z? Has it got this? And that's left brain kicking in. So funnel, start with the broad beam attention on the really emotive images, the beautiful pictures. Picture yourself here. But then you have to get into left brain. Left brain is free on 3 credits on board. Is what sort of cabin would you like? These are the kind of things that I want to get my left brain engaged with. So it's again asking the questions. Do you prefer to have X or Y? And so where we can do that, we can move people down the funnel. And also what's interesting here in these 2 emails examples is this one, the PayPal example, does not assume I'm going to buy anything. I can't buy my weekend away from PayPal. I am just being inspired. Whereas this one's saying, buy now, buy now. So our emails are there to ask the question and engage with that part of the brain and move it on to the next stage. So broad beam is anybody's eyeballs could look at it and make an opinion. Narrow beam is when we've got you, we've watched you go through a few steps. Do you prefer an inside cabin, or would you be interested in, there's lots of different things that we could talk about.
Sure.
Simple.
I guess, Rich, to bring you in on this, Cruise Trade News and World of Cruising, we focus a lot on that kind of broad beam because we have a large database and cruise lines want to reach as many, especially travellers, as possible. So can you give us an example of how we're using kind of broad beam, or in other words, sort of top of the funnel marketing?
Yeah, that's exactly what Adam said. It's like we've got, and going from what you're saying, it's like we continuously need to grow our database. So we've got the segments, we're doing all the great work we are to make sure that the data we have, the users we have is working as well as it can do. But growing that, plugging those segments into social media, into paid search to create new looky-likey audiences of those profiles that are working for us, they're going to be up here. They're going to be that top of the funnel. They've got the same sort of traits. We would expect them to become lower of the funnel, but they're not at that point yet. So creating those sort of like really tasteful, looks great, engaging content to get them in, get them signing up. Their interests may be Caribbean or a specific cruise line, so they've got that bit of interest, but it's all about the visuals, all about us sharing what we can offer them to get them into the database. It's then once they're engaging, it's then when we've got to work closely with our partners and for us to make sure that the content we're nurturing that data, we're nurturing those users and holding their hands down that funnel, showing them what they can have, tweaking that messaging to take them further down it and getting them to eventually become bookers for our partners.
Sure. And how does your team work with, say, a cruise line that we work with? How do you guys help them tailor that message, adapt that messaging? Can you give me examples of, say, like how what might be in a subject line, how that might evolve when someone moves further down that funnel?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing some fantastic work with partners. They all have different segments, so it's like it's great because you're looking at what you can build out for the partner. You're tweaking those segments as well, because you might have one partner that says, yeah, we're only interested in focusing on your Mediterranean segment, or even your cruise line segment. That they are the cruise line, so we've built out this cruise line. But then there's other things that can come into well, we've noticed that we've just launched a new plan in, I don't know, in the Caribbean. So then we've got Caribbean segments. So let's plug that one in, because that might mean that the combination of the cruise line segment and the Caribbean will then start increasing those that are engaged with the cruise line. So it's doing that work, making sure that those initial emails with offers or whatever it is goes to the right people, and then that we're doing a lot of retargeting emails for partners, because they're working so well. Is that if someone from that initial send engages with a specific part of that email, that content, we can then retarget them with a content that's targeted, or a new email that's targeted around what they've engaged with. So if a cruise line partner sends out an email with 10 offers dotted around the world, and we know that user's just engaging with the Caribbean, then the retargeting emails either around that specific offer, or it's 10 new Caribbean offers. You know what I mean? So if we can adapt that retargeting to what the user's engaging with,
sure.
And likewise the subject line to tweak the messaging, the pre-header in their inbox, they can tweak that messaging to make it more engaging and personalise it.
Jack, on that point actually, I write a blog, and I try and look for like little crazy observations that might work. So I started to write one recently about exactly what you just said actually, which is about the subject lines, though, specifically about the subject lines tied to that left brain, right brain, top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. And I have this and anybody out there, by the way, wants to prove me right or wrong on this, I'd love it, because I've not actually done the research. But my theory is top of the funnel. Subject lines in the old days used to always start with the verb. Read, watch, learn, enjoy, do, whatever. Right, top of the funnel subject lines should be fun stuff. Watch, discover. Middle of the funnel needs to be where we transition to read, learn. The harder verbs that are more, and right to the very bottom, buy or book or, do you know what I mean? So imagine it'd be great if somebody was like to reply into the podcast to say, oh, I did it, and he was right or he was wrong. It made no difference. But I will probably at some point over the next few months actually create a list of words and test that myself. But
let's dive inside a bit then. So the words you gave as examples at the top of the funnel, those kind of more aspirational verbs, whereas maybe the more functional verbs. What, as a marketer, what are they doing differently? How are they appealing to people in different ways?
Yeah, if I said to you, learn, right? It's one of those things. It's like, firstly, who am I learning off? Right? What am I going to learn? If I said to you, discover, you're immediately intrigued, and it's almost me as a sender is almost academic. So I've taken almost that out of the equation. So the verb that you choose, and this I know is the case, has been proven to make a difference. So enjoy, for example, is one that you could use fairly. Enjoy 5% off, or enjoy $150 on board credit, or enjoy, you know what I mean, rather than get free. You know, it's just so the verbs that you use at the start, there is a whole body of work around that, but it's just where you can use those, and whether there's a categorization that would make a difference. To say top of the funnel, it's the, how would you define that as a bloke that's so good at English and
Oh God.
what would you call a pretty verb, or a more descriptive verb? What's
oh gosh, well, there's many ways you could describe it. I would say they're the words that capture you, and they're aspirational. What I already used. They have colour. They're provocative. They conjure images in your mind. They might spark a memory. And these are all this all feeds into that emotive side of the brain you mentioned at the top of the podcast.
So I wonder, if I said to you, learn, does that always provoke?
Do you know why I immediately thought when you said learn?
Go on.
My old maths classroom.
Exactly where I was. Yeah, exactly where I was.
You have to be a bit more invested to then go on to the learn stage.
Yeah.
I think that's taking it to the website is exactly what we've done on the website. It's like that inspire, that discover is the main navigation. And then as you come down, you can learn more about the deal, and then you go on to understand book. And you go, that's that final 3 stages. So.
Yeah. I always find we are doing this stuff ourselves naturally in our day-to-day life every day.
Yeah.
But then we come to work and we do something totally different on an email and a subject line, and we just talk like robots almost. And it's like, wait a minute. if I was talking to my kids, I'd talk in a certain way. Talking to a friend, I'd talk in a certain way. Talking to my boss, I'd talk in a certain way. And so, what are these group of people here, and how should I be talking to those? And that's what we've got to understand as marketers.
Well, we're getting onto the topic of content, which is really good. I want to talk about that in a bit more detail. But before I do that, there'll be some people who are listening to this and talking about, okay, it's all well and good that I have people who I've engaged with my messaging around Mediterranean cruises, and they've shown an interest in that, and I'm guiding them down the funnel to that point where hopefully they're going to book a cruise. But what if I'm a travel agent or a cruise line who actually I need to sell more Caribbean, or I need to sell more Nordic cruises? I need to start reversing people up the funnel. Is that possible? How can lines and agencies go? How can they solve that problem?
I don't think there's anything wrong with you promoting what you want to say, just because you can't put a square peg in a round hole. That is the reality of it. So the fallacy is that we've got a commercial director saying we've got to sell more Caribbean cruises. So what we'll start doing is we'll start selling to more people that are unlikely to be categorised as being a Caribbean cruiser, because we're covering more ground. Well, there's two ways of achieving that. As Rich said, it's more about the looky-likeys. What can we do to expand our net more on social media? How can we talk more effectively to the people that we've got that we know are interested in this? And yes, let's bleed out into other markets and see if there is some. But don't forget, you're going to want to sell more med cruises at some point. And you can't have reached a point where they're all pissed off because all we're doing is talking about things that aren't relevant. So don't mucky the future waters by today, but it is okay to look at crossing those barriers occasionally.
Well, let's move on to then some ideas of how people can go about crafting a message, crafting a template of an email in order to sort of really drive that engagement. I think as someone whose primary background is in producing editorial content, obviously we also produce a lot of content on behalf of our advertisers, and so there is a bit of a line to toe there between the visual and editorial guidelines of our magazine, but also kind of making sure that we're hitting all the keynotes, the key messages rather for a cruise line in terms of what their campaign message is. The same kind of goes if you're a brand and you're looking to deliver a message to consumers. So Adam, in your experience of working with brands, so how can they sort of walk the line between their guidelines and producing something that feels intrinsically them, but also delivering a message that's on point for audiences?
Yeah, so interesting key point. The brand guidelines are called guidelines, right? And that's the appropriate word within this. So I think where you've got tone of voice, I think that's different. You've got photography styles. I think that's important. But first and foremost, brands, certainly from a social media perspective, that are rigidly sticking to a set of brand guidelines are, they're not going to be competing. The thumb-stopping content that you see on social media is usually some guy with his iPhone, and that's where brands are leaning on the influencers to try and get that traffic on their behalf. But it's also saying that the most important thing is connecting with the individual, not conveying your exact brand guidelines. So I personally feel it is okay to flex from time to time. Do not directly contravene something, and don't be young and millennial focused if you're not. You got to talk to the people you talk to. But I think it's probably high time that the brand guidelines got up to speed with current usage of brand guidelines, rather than we try and adapt our current use of digital media to an old-fashioned legacy approach of brand guidelines. If that makes sense.
Totally. And Rich, obviously, in the emails that we send, we lean heavily on travel photography because we're trying to create something that's emotive and, like I said before, that captures people. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you go around sort of crafting the content? And I know some of the fantastic people like Rachel and your team are brilliant in terms of delivering that marketing message and honing how to utilise a fantastic snappy subject line and an introduction that kind of really grips you. Like, what's some of the thinking and strategy that goes into that?
Do you know what I think? I think a lot of it is a combination testing. We do a lot of testing of different types because we work closely with partners. So if it's a partner's email that's going out, then we have a brief from them, so we try and keep to that. But they want to work closely with us and for us to make sure that anything that's going out gets the best engagement, best response. So there's a lot of testing that goes on. We spend a lot of time working and giving feedback to our partners in terms of like we talked about at the beginning, how the messaging looks when someone opens up their email for the first time, having that catchy message to start with, not just going into a load of text copy and things like that, keeping it short, sweet, and having a clear call to action at the top, so it's not scrolling down for 10 minutes before you actually get to do anything. So but I would say that the main thing is working closely with partners to getting their message across, because it's not all about leads. We're talking about there are people that are partners that want to engage. They want them to just sign up to their brochures and learn a bit more about it. So it's working closely with them and just getting the right content out there.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much. I think that's sort of approaching the end there, but we covered so many really interesting points. I think that's a fantastic place to end it on. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. You're going to come back again shortly, and we're going to be talking a bit more about what the future of email marketing looks like, and 2 letters that potentially are definitely on the minds of marketers all around the world: AI. So join us for that.
Cheers, Jack. Thank you.